My name's Albert, and I'm going to be your TA for 3155 this semester. So in this video, I just wanted to give you a quick overview on how to set up your environment for what we're going to be doing in this class. You can feel free to look at the description for a list of timestamps if you want to skip around in this video. So for 3155, we're going to be using the Scala programming language, and we're going to be distributing assignments using Jupyter notebooks, which means that you need to install Jupyter through Anaconda and the Scala kernel on top of it. And that's what I'm going to walk through today in VMware. So we can only guarantee support if you install all of this through VMware. You're welcome to try to install locally, but there's really no point in doing so because you can access the Jupyter notebooks through your host machine browser, so it'll basically be just as fast. And we can't guarantee support for everyone's computer since they're all so different. Unfortunately, as of the making of this video, the Fall 2018 VM hasn't been released yet, but as soon as it's ready, we're going to provide a version with everything you need for this class pre-installed. So once that's ready, I'm going to make a post on Piazza, and you can go through the import process in VMware just like I'm going to show you in this video. The only difference is if you use that version, you won't have to go through installing Jupyter and Scala manually. For everyone that doesn't want to use that pre-made image, whether you have a VM set up already or you just don't want to wait, I'm going to go through how to install everything on the VM manually as part of this video. It's just a few commands to run in the terminal, so it's not too bad. Alright, let's get started. So you're going to have three options on how to get set up in this class. Number one, you can download Jupyter and the Scala kernel locally to your computer. I'm not going to go through that in this video. Number two, you can wait for us to release a pre-made virtual machine image with all of the software pre-installed. Or, number three, you can download the CU VM and install the software yourself. So I'm going to go through that last option. I'm going to Google CU CS VM, and I'm going to click the first link, and I'll put this in the description. I'm going to click Obtain, and I'm going to scroll down under Downloads. I'm going to click HTTP, and that will start downloading a zip file of the CU CS VM. Alright, so the first step in this process is going to be to install VMware. So I assume most of you already have this installed since you're in the CS department. If you do, feel free to look at the description to skip forward ahead through this. If not, you're going to want to go to your Colorado EDU email, and you're going to want to do this search. Anywhere to search through all of your inbox and spam and trash and everything. Quote, an account has been created for you, end quote. And if you do that search, you should find an email that you got either when you joined or at the beginning of this semester that says an account has been created for you. So go ahead and click through that. And at the bottom, there's this click here to complete your registration. Go ahead and click on that. And this is what you should see once you register. So this is all of the VMware products that you have access to. Alright, once you're registered with VMware, if you click Home at the upper right, you'll be taken to this page where you can see all of the software you can get for free through CU. If you have a Mac, you want to get VMware Fusion 10, and if you have Windows or Linux, you want VMware Workstation 14. So I'm going to work through how you get VMware Workstation 14. Alright, so once you're on this page, which I got to just by clicking that icon, you're going to want to choose your platform. So I'm going to download the Windows version, but if you're on Linux, make sure you select Linux down here. And then I'm just going to click Add to Cart. So once you click that, you'll get this added to your shopping cart pop-up, and you just want to click Checkout. Alright, so once you check out, you get to this page, and this is where you can see your serial number. So you can just click Download to get the actual software, and then click Download again. Okay, so once VMware Fusion for Mac is downloaded, we're going to go through and install it. So here it is, VMware Fusion 10.dmg. I'm just going to double click that. Click this VMware Fusion.app, double click it. And since I didn't install VMware Fusion through the App Store, it's going to say it's an application I downloaded from the internet. Are you sure I want to open it? And I am sure, so I'm just going to click Open. Alright, so here it's asking me for a license key. So if you remember, we had that serial number. If you don't have that anymore, I'm going to walk through how to get that again. I'm going to go back to VMware Fusion 10, and I'm going to scroll down, click Are you eligible? Scroll down next to VMware Fusion Download. I'm going to click this View link, and here is my serial number. So that is what they want. So going back to VMware, I have a license key, there's my license key. Okay, and there you go, you have VMware installed. Alright, so I've installed VMware, I've downloaded and unzipped my CSVM. The next step is to go ahead and import it. So in VMware Fusion, I'm going to select Import an Existing Virtual Machine, and I'm going to click it. I'm going to hit Continue, and to pick it, I'm going to choose File, go to my desktop, because that's where my VM is, go to my folder that I unzipped, and I'm going to select this only file that's not grayed out, the .ovf file, and click Open. So now I've selected it, and I'm going to continue. So I'm just going to rename this something a little more useful, like CUCS, and you can name that whatever you want. Alright, I'm going to save it, and it's going to import the virtual machine. Alright, and it's imported. So if you look here, by default it gives it 2 gigabytes of memory. Scala is pretty resource intensive, so I'm going to up that to at least 4, and if your computer can handle it, 6 would be better. So I'm going to customize settings, click on processors and memory, give it maybe 4 cores, and then 6 gigabytes. Now I'm going to start it up. Alright, and we're in. Okay, now I'm going to walk through installing VMware Workstation on a Windows 10 computer. I'm going to select VMware Workstation 14. So now I'm going to go and make sure that I'm in Windows, select Add to Cart, and I've already ordered it, so I'm going to go back here. Here I can see my VMware Workstation 14 for Windows, which I've already gotten. So we're going to go to View Details. Here's my serial. I will copy that and download again. Alright, I have the VMware Workstation executable downloaded, and I have my serial number right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the executable that I just downloaded, and now we'll go through this install wizard. So I'm going to go next, I accept, next. I'm not going to get this driver, but you are free to. I don't want either of those. Next, install. And I have, so our license key is going to be this serial number right here in red. So I do have a license, so I'm going to put that in. Just going to go over here, copy, and paste. Enter. And finish. Alright, so that should be installed now. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Alright, so now I'm going to select Open a Virtual Machine, Desktop, and then I'm going to select this OVF file. Okay, so it looks like that's installed. Now, if I look here, my defaults look a little low to me. 2 gigabytes of memory and 2 processor cores. Scala is pretty resource intensive, so I am going to edit my virtual machine settings. I'm going to up my RAM to 4 gigabytes, and I'm going to set my processors to 4. And now I can start it up. Great, and we're in. Alright, now let's install VMware Workstation for Linux. So for this I'm going to go to VMware Workstation 14, and I'm going to select Linux, and I'm going to add to cart, but I've already ordered it, so I'm going to click this button, and I'm going to find VMware Workstation 14 for Linux and view details. From here I can download it again, download, and I can see my product key right here. Alright, so VMware just finished downloading. So what it did is it downloaded a .bundle file. So in order to run that, we're going to have to open up a terminal, and we're going to have to move into the downloads folder. So to run that bundle file, I'm going to do sudo sh and give it VMware Workstation 14. I will give it the recent one, and it's asking for my password since I'm running this as sudo. Alright, so now that ran the VMware Workstation installer. So I'm going to accept the terms and service, and I'm going to go next, I'm going to accept, I'm going to go next. And then here in the license key area, what it wants is my serial number. Put that in, go next. Alright, and it looks like it installed correctly. So now we're going to go in and open VMware Workstation. And what I'm going to do is open a virtual machine, VMOVF. Alright, so this looks fine. I'm going to import. Alright, so it looks like it's been imported. I do think the default memory and processors are a little low for what we're doing. So I'm going to move this up to 4 gigs of RAM, and I'm going to give it 4 processors. And I'll save that. Alright, and now we can start it up. And I'm just going to click OK for that. Click OK again. And there we go, we're in. Alright, so now our CS virtual machine is started up, so we need to install Anaconda to install Jupyter Notebook, and we need the Scala kernel for it. To start off, I'm going to install Jupyter Notebook, searching for Jupyter Notebook, and going to install. So they recommend using the Anaconda distribution, so we're going to do that. You just need to scroll down and download the installer. Okay, so while that's downloading, I personally try to avoid using the GUI for virtual machines as much as I can. So I'm going to SSH into the virtual machine, which is this window here, from my host machine. So that means I can use the terminal on my host machine, which is quite a bit faster, to interact with my virtual machine, as if I was using that terminal. So to do that, we need to find its IP address. So we're going to open up the terminal in the virtual machine. And again, this is all optional. You can just use this terminal already, but I prefer to use the one in my host. If you don't want to SSH, then don't worry about this part. Alright, so to find its IP, we're going to do ifconfig, and that's going to give us 2 results. It's going to give us an LO and an ENS33. So LO right here stands for local loopback, and that's just to get back to yourself. So that's your local host. So we don't want that. What we want is ENS33. So under ENS33, I see inet adder. So this is my IPv4 address that I want to SSH into. So reading this off, I have 172.16.51.130. So to get into my virtual machine, over in my host terminal, so this is not in my virtual machine at all. This is a different application. I'm going to type SSH user, USER, because that's the username over here. If we move these over, it says default user USER, default password USER. So we're going to type our username at our IP address. So I've already done this, so it's asking me to fill it in, but I'm still going to type it in. 172.16.51.130. and enter. So now it's asking me for my password, and I'm going to give it USER. All right, and now I'm in. So now I can interact with the VM as if I was using the terminal in here, but it's using my host terminal application. Okay, so it looks like, so I'm just going to close that out. It looks like this is finished downloading. Since it's a .sh file and it's executable, it's telling me that it could be a virus, but I know it's not, so I'm going to click keep. So now it has downloaded this .sh file. So what I'm going to do, either in the terminal I SSH'd into or using this terminal that I just opened up here, so it's the same thing, whichever one you prefer, I'm going to go into my downloads directory. So currently I'm in my home directory, home/user. If I ls, I will see downloads. So I will change directory to downloads, and if I ls in there, I will see my anaconda.sh. So I'm going to try to execute my anaconda.sh, and it's not letting me tab complete, so it means that's telling me that it's not executable yet. So if I list -l for long, my anaconda file, it's going to show me that I can read and write it, but I can't execute it. So to fix that, it's an sh file, so we need to run it to execute it. I'm going to chmod, change the mod, add the executable permission to this anaconda.sh file. So once I do that, if I list it again, it turned green, if you see that here, instead of just being white, and I have this execute permission. So to install this, I'm just going to run it. Anaconda.sh, enter. All right, to continue the installation, please review the license agreement. I'm just going to click enter, and it's going to try to get me to do this. I will accept it. So I just clicked Q there to get out of that. So you click Q and then you type YES. All right. So I'm fine with home user Anaconda 3, so I'm just going to click enter, and now it's installing. Okay, so it looks like it finished installing, and it wants me to prepend the install location to path. So it's doing this so that we can run the binaries that it installed just from the command line. So I'm going to click yes. I'm going to type yes. I don't want to install VS Code. You're free to. And it's done. All right, so now let's test to make sure that Jupyter installed correctly. I'm going to do everything from now on in the host machine, and in the virtual machine, not using SSH, and I'll show you how to do this all in the host machine later in the video. Okay, so going back to our virtual machine, we've just installed Jupyter, we just installed Anaconda, but if you had any tabs open that you didn't use to install Anaconda, if you try to run Jupyter, it won't find it because it won't be in your path variable. So we need to open a new tab, which should reload the path variable. So now I'm going to type Jupyter as my command and notebook as the argument, and click enter. And so it just opened up Jupyter Notebook. All right, so let's make a test file to make sure that this ran properly. New, and my only kernel that I have installed right now is going to be Python 3. We'll install Scala in just a second. So I'm going to open up Python 3, and I'll type 1 + 1 maybe, and I will run the cell, and it gives me 2. So it looks like that's working fine. So our next step is going to be installing the Scala kernel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up Jupyter-Scala. Again, link will be in the description. And that first result is going to be the GitHub page for the kernel that we're using. If you follow their instructions in their README, they'll tell you to run this Jupyter-Scala.script. So if you click there, it'll show you this big script. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to their README. I'm going to right-click on that script and do Save Link As. And I'm just going to put that in my downloads. I'm going to call it Jupyter-Scala.sh. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my downloads. Downloads. If I ls, it'll be right here. And we'll have that same issue as before. See, this one's green, but this one's still white, which means if we try to execute it, it won't find it. So what we need to do is we need to make it executable, just like last time, with a chmod plus x, Jupyter-Scala, and if we ls again, it'll be green, which means it's executable. So now I can run it. So I just type that in and I click enter. If you're doing this not on the VM, but on your own personal Linux machine, you will also need to install JDK 8 or 1.8, but that's already installed in this VM, so I'm not going to go through that. Just be aware that you'll need that as a dependency. So now it should be installed. So let's test that out. I am going to restart my Jupyter Notebook server. So I just clicked Control-C. I'm going to say yes to shut it down. So that it picks up that new kernel. I'm going to do Jupyter Notebook again, and I'm going to close these old tabs that it opened up. So Jupyter Notebook, just like last time, it'll open up a tab, and I should be able to go and make new, and click new, and it shows me Scala now. So I'm going to click that. So Scala has a much longer startup time than Python, so be aware of that. It'll take probably about a minute. So there we go, it's starting up. All right, so especially the first time that we run it, it needs to actually go out, and you can see this output in Jupyter Notebooks. It's going to start downloading a lot of dependencies. So I'm just going to give it print hi. So this circle will be a solid circle when it's running, and it will be this hollow circle when it's idle. So I waited until it was idle. I'm going to type that in, and I'm going to click run cell. There we go. So it looks like it ran. So this is all set up. So this next part's going to be completely optional, but I'm going to show you, if you want, how to run the Jupyter Notebook server in the virtual machine, but the UI in the browser of your host machine. So to do that, first kill off any Jupyter servers by just doing Control-C. And then once you've done that, all you need to do differently is when you run Jupyter Notebook, you have to give it 2 extra arguments. So the first one is -- no browser, so that it doesn't start up a browser in your virtual machine. And the second one is --IP equals 4 zeros, 0.0.0.0. So that tells it to accept incoming connections from anywhere instead of just the local host. It'll tell you to copy paste this URL into your browser when you connect for the first time. So the issue with that is some people can't copy and paste between their virtual machine and their host machine, and this is a pretty long URL to type by hand. So alternatively, if you look, it's just giving you a token, so it's just trying to authenticate you. So instead of using this big long URL, we can set a password by running the command Jupyter space notebook space password. So when we run that, it asks us to enter a password, and we don't even have to enter anything. We can use an empty password. So I'm just going to click enter, enter, and it's all set. So now, when I rerun Jupyter Notebook no browser IP 0000, I just have to type in this tiny URL here. The very last issue with this is that it won't quite work if we do cu-cs-vm 8888. Instead, we need the IP of the virtual machine to put instead of cu-csvm, because it doesn't know what this website is. So again, to find that, we can just open up a new tab and do ifconfig, looking at the one that isn't LO, so in my case ENS33, we find inet adder 172.168.51.130. So going back to my host, so this is my VM, going back to my browser and my host machine, I just need to type in my IP address, 172.168.130:8888. And when I go to that website, it asks me for a password, and since mine was empty, I just click login. And there we go. I'm using the Jupyter Notebook UI in Safari on my Mac and running the server on my virtual machine. Okay, so the very last thing I'm going to show you how to install is going to be the plugin that we use for Jupyter Notebook to grade your assignments. So this is going to be optional as well. You can finish the assignments completely without this extension, but if you install this, you're going to get a nice little button that says Validate, which runs your notebooks and tells you if any of the cells threw an exception. So again, you can just check that by eye, but if you want this nice little button, then you have to install this extension, and I'm just going to run through how to do that. So what we use is called NbGrader, so I'm just going to look that up, and as always, I'll have the link in the description. And as a reminder, the way I have this whole thing set up is I have my virtual machine on the left, and I have my SSH terminal on the right, and everything I type here is exactly as if I typed it in a terminal within the virtual machine. So let's make this a little bigger. So NbGrader, I'm going to go to their read the docs documentation and to the installation page. And it says if we use Anaconda, which is what we showed you how to install in this video and what we installed on the pre-made images, we're going to do these commands. So we're going to do conda install Jupyter. This is all within the virtual machine. Alright, and it's asking me to upgrade conda, so I will. Great, that's done. So it's telling me to do conda install -c conda forge NbGrader. Alright, so it's telling me what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to say yes. So now we've installed NbGrader. There's just one last thing we have to do. By default, NbGrader installs the teaching extensions as well, and you guys aren't going to need those. So to remove clutter from your Jupyter Notebook experience, we're going to disable those extensions. So I'm going to post a link to this shell script in the description. All it does is it runs Jupyter NB extension disable with whichever extensions we don't need. So I'm going to click download zip, and it says I downloaded this folder C9D something something something. So if I go to my downloads directory and I ls, I can find that zip file. So to unzip it, I just do unzip and then give it the file and click enter. So now when I ls, I have both the zip and the directory unzipped. If I go into that directory, I can see my shell script. But again, it's not executable yet, so we have to chmod +x NbGrader. Alright, and then if we ls, we find that it's green. So now to run it, we're just going to do /NbGrader disable teaching extension .sh. And we click enter. Alright, so it looks like it disabled everything properly, and in the end, it shows us that we still have our assignment validation extensions installed. So let's go ahead and test out this installation. We made a small notebook that has a couple failing questions and one succeeding question. So we're just going to download this, run it, and make sure that validate works properly. So I'm going to do, again, this link will be in the description. I'm going to download zip, and now if I cd into my downloads directory again, and I ls to list my files, I have this new zip 64.zip. So I will unzip again, 64. If I ls, I have that new folder. I can cd into that, ls, and I have my .ipynb. So now I'm going to open up my terminal, and I'm already in my downloads folder here. And I'm just going to do Jupyter Notebook. And finally, I should be able to see, to open up that notebook. And that extension gave me this validate button. So I'm going to go ahead and click validate. And it's going to take a while because it starts up its own kernel on top of the one that we have. Alright, and I'm seeing exactly what I expected. One of my code tests failed. Add 2 to 3 was not 5. And I forgot to answer one of my write-up questions. So it tells me you did not provide a response. So I can fix those two errors if I want by adding 2 in my add 2 function and by putting in some answer. And now I just click validate, and now everything's running as expected. So one last thing I want to note is the validator is a little strange in that if you have any empty code cells and you try to validate, it'll go into an infinite loop. So make sure you delete any empty cells before running validate.